Alright, welcome to another video of Kryptonite maneuver. Just want to try something real quick here. Let me see if this works. Source. No, that's not it. Alright, that's fine. That's alright. That's okay. Alright, so we have 1 day until haywire. I don't know if that mic is working. There. Just unplug this. 1 sec. Alright. Well, I guess I don't need this. So this is kind of interesting. I purchased this on Amazon. It's basically, I don't know if you could see that. It's The Adventures of Superman, the radio edition. I thought this was pretty cool. It's like 26 episodes. And I'll talk a little bit about the origin of Superman here, but listen to this.
Presenting Superman. Up in the sky. Look, it's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's Superman. And now, Superman. Amazing figure from another world with powers and abilities never before realized by mortal men. Given a chance to make good by Perry White, city editor of the Daily Planet, young Clark Kent, who is really Superman, leaped out a window 20 stories above the ground and vanished in a swirl of fog. Secret warnings had come to the newspaper of a vague and sinister plot against the railroads of the West.
I love it. It's interesting. The origin of Superman back in 1941 is a little bit different than what we have today. So this is a little bit of how the origin was back then. And I'll talk a little bit about Superman's powers as well, and hopefully this will kind of relate to tomorrow's 4th episode of Superman and Lois. But it's just interesting to know where we came from. So the origin of Superman, 1941, it was created by Joel Shuster and Jerry Siegel back in 1939. But the origin's kind of funny. So when you watch it or when you listen to it on the radio, it's basically it starts off with Jor-El in a council meeting trying to convince everyone that Krypton is doomed, and there's earthquakes, there's volcanoes, all kinds of eruptions going on, all kinds of stuff, and it would come and go. So he had to present his case to the council, and they all laughed at him. All of them. They all laughed. Because he suggested that what they could do is create thousands of ships and take everyone from Krypton to Earth. And the reason why they picked Earth was the atmosphere was very similar to Krypton, and they would be able to live there. But the interesting thing is they had superpowers on Krypton. They were all Superman, all of them, because Jor-El was trying to explain it to Lara by saying that's his wife, by saying that we could take one stride and go like 13 blocks or something like that, whereas on Earth, the humans there take one stride and it's 3 feet. So it just gives you an idea. So it's basically a whole race of Supermen. And he built a prototype ship. And the idea was to send it out into space and to test it and see how it would come back to Krypton and land and all that kind of stuff. But as Jor-El was explaining that to his wife, more earthquakes started happening, and it got so bad that Lara ran into the house, grabbed Kal-El in a blanket, and put him in the ship. And they decided then and there to send Kal-El to Earth because it wouldn't hold three of them. Originally, the plan was to build a rocket that holds three of them and then go to Earth together as a family. But that didn't happen. So the planet gets destroyed just as the ship leaves with baby Kal-El on it. Through the journey, I think it took like 20 years or something like that, because by the time Kal-El arrived on Earth, he was a grown man. That is different than other comics, TV shows, movies, all that. He arrives as a baby. Jonathan and Martha Kent basically take him as one of their own. In this, they do not do that. He arrives, he lands in a desert somewhere in Arizona, I think. And I don't think there's any deserts in Kansas. But he's fully grown. He ends up flying. Well, we get introduced to two characters. It's a dad, we don't know his name, and the son, which is Jimmy. This might have been the first kind of Jimmy Olsen type character, even though he's not a photographer or anything like that. They were outside, I believe it was a small town, and they're hopping onto a trolley to go to an amusement park. And all of a sudden the brakes give way and the trolley starts taking off on its own. And the kid's like, he's probably like 10 years old, and he's like, Dad, what are we going to do? The brakes are going. We're heading towards a tree. And Dad's like, let's break the glass. And they try to get out of the trolley, and they realize that they're going too fast. All of a sudden, somebody flies in, grabs the roof of the trolley, rips it off, grabs both of them, the dad and the son, and just at the last second jumps up in the air as the trolley smashes to a million pieces against the tree. Again, this is all radio with sound effects and all this kind of stuff. And they're all like, put me down, who are you, and all this. And he's like, quiet, we're going down, 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 steady, down. There, that's better. We just landed. It's radio. It's kind of interesting how they spoke back then. Very quick. Very sharp, very quick. You see, this is the way they talk. They talk real quick. It's just kind of interesting. So, anyways, he rescues them, and they say thanks and all this kind of stuff. They're very surprised at this guy, that he can fly and all this kind of stuff. And he asks them if they could do him a favor, and that is keep a secret. He doesn't want them to tell anybody that he's Superman, period. So they promise that they won't tell anyone. Then he asks for a favor, could you help me? And they're like, sure, we'd be obliged to help you. And he said, I need to find a place where I can basically watch mankind and then decide whether or not I can help, depending on what's going on and all that kind of stuff. I need to be able to observe humanity. So the dad says, why don't you become a reporter? And I don't think he specifically named the Daily Planet, but he said, why don't you just be a reporter? That way, anytime there's any news, good or bad, you'll know about it. So Superman said that was a great idea. And the kid said, but you can't go like that. You're in your costume. You can't go with that big S, your crest, and all this kind of stuff. And Superman was like, well, these are my clothes. So then the dad and the son come up with the idea that he needs to have a secret identity, and the kid comes up with the name Clark Kent. So I thought that was kind of interesting. The kid came up with the name, not Martha, Jonathan, or anything like that, but the kid came up. He said that's kind of a neutral name, kind of a name that goes under the radar. So then Clark says, I like it, and finds a suit and all this kind of stuff and heads off to, they don't say it in the first 3 episodes, but it's Metropolis. And he goes and works for the Daily Planet, asks for a job. Perry White says, no, you have no experience whatsoever. I'm not going to hire you. And then Clark Kent says, what if I bring you a good story about the wolf? There was some guy that was trying to derail trains, and that was the big bad guy thing of the day. Not like Lex Luthor today with nuclear plans and trying to buy up all this land and all this kind of stuff. Back then, it was just the wolf. The wolf was trying to derail trains. So Superman ends up uh, jumping out of the building, which is kind of funny because Miss Smith, which is one of the receptionists, went to go get him an advance of $200 because Perry agreed to give him $200. And then he couldn't wait. All the planes were down. He had to go 2,000 miles across the U.S. And Perry's like, yeah, the planes are all down. And Clark's like, don't worry about it. I'll figure out a way. And when Miss Smith goes to get his advance payment, he jumps out of a window, 20-story building, and turns into Superman and then flies across the U.S. to try and catch the wolf and stop him from derailing a train that's headed to Colorado, I believe, somewhere around there. So it's kind of interesting. He had a tough time catching up to the train, which was going a whopping 90 miles an hour. 90 miles an hour. So that's amazing in itself. That I think later on, Superman's powers get more and more because creative writers begin adding superpowers to him, like heat vision, all this kind of stuff. But right now, he can fly, but 90 miles an hour is he's hitting his limits. So he gets on the train, ends up he doesn't have any money or anything like that, and they want to actually arrest him. They were wondering who he was on this train, and he's like, I'm a reporter. And they're like, okay, we'll stop at the next town and we'll prove whether or not you're a reporter. And he's like, no, my conscience is bothering me right now, so I got to get off this train. Meanwhile, up ahead, there's a avalanche happening, and Clark notices this and somehow gets off the train while they're chasing him. Turns into Superman, goes in front of the train, and this is how he stops the train. He pulls the emergency brake, and it causes the train to stop. So as Clark Kent, he actually stopped the train. Then as Superman, he goes out to the rail tracks, the train tracks, and removes all the boulders while the train is stopped. And then basically, it's so confusing. Then he turns back to Clark Kent and then says to the conductor that if it wasn't for me stopping the train by using the handbrakes, you guys would have hit the boulder and then went down the embankment of like 300 feet or something. They're like, yeah, you got a point there. Anyways, it's kind of confusing, but it's just interesting. This is 1941, and when you watch the TV show Superman and Lois, there's a few things that have changed. Obviously, Superman is stronger. He's still from Smallville, and he has to take off to go and rescue things, bridges in China, and all this kind of stuff. So he's very fast. We see his heat vision. We see his super strength. We see his super breath, his cold breath. So we see a little bit of his superpowers. It's kind of cool. kind of interesting. I like stuff like that. So I have 23 more episodes to listen to. They're only like 10 minutes long. So that would have been a day to listen to all that stuff, over the radio. It would have been kind of cool. But I thought I would just make a little video about the adventures of Superman. And I can't wait for Superman and Lois tomorrow night, which is Haywire. It should be pretty exciting. And